Okay, we are here today talking about subject-verb agreement and parallelism. Okay, so let's sort of think about this we talked about this before in these grammar and punctuation reviews. It's one of these concepts, subject-verb agreement, right? I mean, it's one of these concepts that like everybody who speaks English intuitively understands. Okay, so why study them? Well, as I'm going to show you guys that there's several situations that I think can cause confusion, and this is significant, there are situations where your computer's grammar check won't know the answer. You can confuse it. And so that's why it's important that you sort of understand what you're trying to convey and the ideas you're trying to convey in the grammar that you intend. Okay? So my aim here, again, is to help you understand these concepts as concepts so that you're not so dependent on your word processor's grammar check function. Okay, so let's start with subject-verb agreement. The basic rule is that the subject and verbs in English have to agree in person and number. Okay, so singular subject gets a singular verb, plural subject, plural verb. Okay, when the subject of the sentence is a simple noun, it's easy to apply this rule, and in fact, our system for conjugating verbs is very, very simple in English. And if any of y'all have studied another language, you'll know what I'm talking about here, right? It's like, for us, it's I write, you write, he or she writes, but then all the others are just write. We write, you write, or y'all write, they write, okay? In the present tense, right? It gets a little bit more complicated when the subject is more complex, okay? So what happens when you have a sentence with two or more nouns in the subject position? Then what kind of verb do you take? Well, there's some different rules here, okay? If they are connected with the word and, you use the plural verb, regardless of whether the nouns are singular or plural, okay? So the table and couch look new. Fred and his brothers fight constantly. You'll see that? Fred, singular, brothers, plural, gets a plural verb, doesn't matter, what composition of singular and plural the subject is, okay? Now, it gets a little bit more complicated. If the subject has two or more singular nouns connected by an or a nor, you use the singular verb. All right, here's my example. Neither Frank nor his brother cares about their family, okay? Do y'all see that? So it's neither Frank nor his brother cares about the family. You use the singular verb there, okay? Now, don't be this is just sort of a side note here. Don't be confused by modifying phrases that you might see in the sentence. You've got to locate the subject, not the first noun you see. Look at this example. On Saturday or Sunday, they start their vacation, okay? Do y'all see how that they that I've underlined there, that's the true subject of the sentence, and it's plural. And that whole Saturday or Sunday thing, that's not the actual subject of the sentence. That's just a prepositional phrase at the beginning. Okay, so you've got to hone in on the actual subject here. Okay, now here's another kind of permutation of that. If the subject has a singular noun and a plural noun connected by an or a nor, you make the verb agree with the noun that is closest to the verb. The kitchen or the bedrooms need to be cleaned first. Do y'all see that? Kitchen singular or bedrooms plural, need, not needs, to be cleaned first, because it takes the it takes the subject that's closest to the verb, and it agrees with that. So if we reverse that same sentence, our verb should change, okay? The bedrooms or the kitchen needs to be cleaned first. And so you can sort of hear that intuitively, right? I mean, that just sounds right, okay? It's what's going on is it's agreeing with the noun that is closest to the verb, with that when they're separated by an or. Okay, so there's certain indefinite pronouns, each, neither, everyone, everybody, anyone, someone, and no one. All of those are treated as singular. Okay, so guess what? Use a singular verb, right? Now here's where it's kind of weird, even if the word implies more than one person. And a word like everybody certainly does, right? think about it like this. It's one of these nouns of an unknown quantity. It sort of defaults to one because we don't know how many more than one we're dealing with, okay? So everyone thinks they know the answer. Do y'all see that? Everyone thinks they know the answer. Not everyone think they know the answer, okay? Everyone is, I think the idea is more than one person, but it sort of defaults back to one, and you make it agree with one. How about this one? Each takes her own turn in the pool. Y'all see that? Each is the subject of the sentence, and it's suggesting there's several girls here or whatever going in the pool, right? But it's kind of defaulting to one. Okay. The indefinite pronouns some, most, more, or none can be singular or plural depending on the context. So you use information in the sentence to determine how it's being used. Some of the dollar was spent. You'll see that? Some of the dollar was spent. Okay? But that's singular. But you can say some of the dollars were spent. Plural, right? Okay, what about collective nouns? These are nouns that name a group made up of multiple individual members. Words like family, committee, board, faculty, team. Okay? And they're tricky because they can be treated as singular or plural depending on the context. So if the meaning is that the group is acting together, the collective noun is singular. The whole family is celebrating the holidays at home. Okay? So there you'll see that the family, but it's treated as one, and so the family is, not the family are, okay? Because they're all acting in a sort of coordinated way, doing something together, okay? But if the meaning is more toward each individual in the group acting independently, then the collective noun becomes plural. And whenever I show students this one, they always kind of look at me funny. The family have gone their separate ways. And believe it or not, that's grammatical because it's the sense of that collective noun. What you mean? You mean the family, it's a group of people, but the sense of that group here is no longer a unified action. Y'all see that? They're all acting independently. They're all going separate ways, okay? And so that's why it's have gone their separate ways. Okay, what about this one? The committee decides tomorrow or the committee decide tomorrow? Okay? What do y'all think? It's probably the committee decides tomorrow because if it's a committee decision, then it's like it's the decision of the collective, singular, right? They're not all deciding individually. That's okay? So that's the idea. If you mean the unified group acting, then it's singular, okay? And by the way, this is an example where you can't leave it to your grammar check to know the answer, okay? I put that one sentence we looked at a few minutes ago into my grammar check on Word, and look, it gave me that squiggly line that shows that it thinks something's wrong grammatically. The family have all gone their separate ways, okay? That's because it's applying some kind of algorithm to this that doesn't recognize that different sense, the different possible sense of family, not as a collective noun, okay? The point is, Word does not comprehend your meaning, okay? It's just looking for patterns. It's applying algorithms. You've got to be the final judge on your writing, okay? So don't let grammar check boss you around. Okay, prepositional phrases can sometimes cause subject-verb confusion when they modify the sentence subject, okay? The reason is that the prepositional phrase contains nouns, the object of the preposition. Okay, and we talked about these before. Prepositional phrase like in the store, on the roof, with her friend. Okay, all of those phrases you can see contain nouns in them, right? But the prepositional phrases are modifying something else. Okay, and in our case here, the subject of the sentence. Okay, so for subject-verb agreement, what counts is the actual subject of the sentence and not the prepositional phrase. Okay, look at this sentence. The stack of instruction forms were misplaced. Okay, and that's not, this sentence does not have subject-verb agreement. Okay, do you see why? Do you see what the writer did? They made the verb agree with forms, okay? But that's not the true subject of the sentence. The subject of the sentence is the stack of instruction forms was misplaced, okay? The subject is stack, and it's modified by this phrase of instruction forms, telling us which stack, okay? So that means the verb should agree with stack and not forms, okay? Another way to see it is sort of to treat the prepositional phrase as an adjective, okay? So instead of saying the stack of instruction forms was misplaced, you could say, and it would be equally valid, you could say the instruction form stack was misplaced. Do y'all see how that's just another way of writing the same sentence? And when you say it that way, I think it's the subject-verb agreement maybe is a little bit more clear. The instruction form stack was misplaced. The stack of instruction forms was misplaced. Y'all see that same sentence? It's just you're moving around that modifying phrase to a different position. Okay, how about this one? The complicated instructions on the new income tax form really confuses me, or the complicated instructions on the new tax form really confuse me. Which one is it? What's the answer? It's this one. The complicated instructions on the new tax form really confuse me, okay? Think about it like this. Without all the sort of modifiers, mucking it up, the sentence would be much more simple. It would just read, the instructions confuse me, okay? And everything else in that sentence is just modifiers tacked onto that basic core sentence, okay? So there's sort of an easy test you can apply to check for subject-verb agreement with a long, complicated sentence like that. What you can do is substitute a pronoun, okay, like it, he, that, okay, for the entire sentence subject. And then and that will tell you whether or not it's singular or plural, okay? So look at this one. The complicated instructions on the new tax form, y'all can see that's the whole subject of the sentence. Very long subject, right? With all those modifiers. Really confuses me. Just take that whole subject and use a pronoun instead. They really confuse me, okay? And now you can sort of hear the subject-verb agreement more clearly. It should be they confuse, right? Okay, so that's just a little trick you can do. Okay, I'm going to stop here and take up parallelism in my next video. And then we'll do some practice at the end.